We've got some rifle buffs. That's the first time we've seen that, surely.
Yeah, boy.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Daddy, yes! Yes! The time has come and so have I. I'll laugh last 'cause you came to die. The damage done subside. And I can see the fear clear when I look in your eye.
I'm taking my balls and leaving.
Peekaboo!
Notice me, senpai!
Did you forget about me? You sluggish simpleton!
2 seconds later.
I'm back, you subnormal half-wit! Peekaboo!
Oh no!
You suck!
12 seconds later.
Hello again, dumbbell! You know, hiding won't save you. Peekaboo! Oh! You drunken wretch! Boo! Weren't you supposed to be good at dodging? Ah! I hate you!
Eventually.
I require assistance! Ah! What a disaster!
Warrior's Rifle is that one weapon which everyone knew and either dreaded or adored, but seemingly nobody played it, because it was just a bit of a mess. Until now. Whenever a singular weapon receives multiple changes in the same patch, it's obviously apparent that devs either want to see it played or really don't. In Rifle's case, it's the first option, as all changes are positive. I use term positive changes and not buffs for a simple reason. Practically all changes present are either quality of life upgrades or have hidden costs attributed to them, in a way that makes them more side grades than actual buffs. And that's a good thing. Warrior's current most effective tactic is already just grabbing his bloody stat block and using it as a bludgeoning weapon. This class suffers from overabundant junk, tragic pre- and aftercasts, as well as complete lack of utility in majority of its weapons, to the point where most skills that aren't staff skills can be described in detail with one sentence. Henceforth, Warrior needs nothing more than quality of life or functionality improvements, and thanks to the most recent patch, Warrior's Rifle no longer plays like pre-release alpha version of itself. In both PvP and PvE, overall feel of the weapon was drastically improved. Explosive Shell no longer loses its value as an AoE when you're trying to snipe somebody at the back of whatever group of enemies you're fighting. Brutal Shot is no longer a DPS loss for no reason in PvE, and it actually lands in PvP when you're trying to dodge jump-ins with it. Rifle Butt no longer forces you to melee to function, but still encourages it with cooldown reduction, which makes a great deal of difference in a feeling department of a weapon. And of course, resetting best cooldown with Rifle Butt has a great deal of significance when it comes to damaging builds, as what you may have guessed, 3 Gunflames are a little more than 2. Playing this weapon before and after the patch are 2 completely different experiences. Before the patch, you had to be very mindful of Rifle's shortcomings and learn to use its junk to your advantage, on top of which you could only succeed by catching people off guard. After the patch, I already had people tell me how they are sad you can't about-face Brutal Shot to roll forward and still fire forward. There were insane people already playing Rifle before this patch. They were few, they were weird, and they were having paint directly off of walls in New Kaineng right next to me. Link to the Discord is in the description. Consider joining. We have a fresh batch of paint. What I'm trying to say is that people who were already used to playing with old Rifle will become even more dangerous with the new one. Therefore, anyone and anything wanting to retain the natural amount of holes in it needs to do their homework fast.
What are you gonna teach me today? A brand new technique? How to sense energy? What about how to fly? Dodge!
Fortunately for all those with fondness for their distance from Grenth, Triple Gunflame is not going to be as big of a deal as people worried it would be, despite the obvious fact that majority of players have only 2 dodges. To fulfill adrenaline requirements for bursting thrice in quick succession, you either have to equip additional adrenaline generation utility, sacrificing your only source of stability for the sake of reset, or have to play arms defense with Opportunist and Merciless Hammer, where first competes directly with Signet Mastery, effectively costing you between 300 and 500 ferocity in typical fight, as well as cutting into your unblockable stacks access, and the second doing nothing for Rifle except generating adrenaline, as its damage buff only applies to specific weapons. Furthermore, changing strength or defense deprives you of access to Restorative Strength trait, a vital for consistency source of resistance that we need not to lose our entire damage output to the fact that half of the specs in the game now spam AoE blindness. In short, builds able to utilize Triple Gunflame are more counterable and more vulnerable to counter-engage than classic Gunzerker builds. In PvE, matters unroll differently, as the risks from NPCs are much more predictable than for invisible mesmers face rolling over the keyboard, and therefore taking greater risk is less often punished by swift and random death. In this consistent, predictable environment, Triple Gunflame has much greater impact. Not only through the obvious courtesy of Hit the Soul granting quickness on landing a burst, Triple Gunflame will assist in upkeeping boons on yourself and the party. And not only will it help maintain Bazak, but also having a daze on it, it will eat away at those pesky Defiance bars. Unfortunately, not all is green on our side of the fence yet, as Warrior is still forced into melee a little more than it should. You see, Outrage, a skill commonly used to maintain Berserk, requires an enemy to be within 240 range threshold to grant its full adrenaline and full rage extension. This range threshold is so short that using Brutal Shot moves us backwards almost twice the distance. Outrage is of course practically guaranteed to grant full benefits when you're dual-wielding axes and shoving yourself close enough to enemy to rip his chest hair out with your teeth while you're chopping him to pieces. But when you wield a ranged weapon, it is easy to backpedal out of that distance. And considering the fact that to upkeep rage we have to press that button on the repeat every 10 or so seconds, it feels very constricting to play around its ranged requirements, where otherwise you'd be free to stand wherever within 1200 range from your target and still perform optimally. Not receiving full rage extension is bad enough, but additionally Outrage grants in PvE only 5 adrenaline baseline, which, as you may realize if math isn't your sworn enemy, is less than 10, preventing us from dishing out triple gunflame combos as fast as possible from outside the range threshold. Outrage is the last primary bottleneck withholding rifle's performance in PvE, be it open world or instanced content. Henceforth, my question: what would have happened if Outrage just gave you its current full benefits as the baseline? What negative connotations would that have? It wouldn't affect melee builds, which are already proccing it at full effect all the time. It wouldn't increase DPS of the Berserker, as none of it is directly tied to the skill giving or not giving full benefits. It wouldn't allow for permanent rage upkeep out of combat, as Smash Brawler plays too big role in that bonanza, and other rage skills still need to hit something to extend Berserk. Warrior cannot keep adrenaline out of combat, so that would not be an issue either. And in PvP or World v World, Outrage is everyone's last choice anyway, and making it grant 20 adrenaline instead of 10 to a spec that has adrenaline capped at 10 within rage anyway isn't going to rip the meta off its hinges. The only possible effect of making Outrage's current greater benefits baseline is rifle and spear builds becoming noticeably more relaxing to play in PvE, with pretty much no effects whatsoever on either of the versus modes. Therefore, my humble plea to the 3 people overseeing the potted plant in charge of Warrior's changes: consider introducing it to the idea of making Outrage's increased benefits baseline. Circling back to competitive modes. Apparently someone on the balance team at least read the Warrior forums. Because honestly, if they bothered to play Gunzerker, or at least checked out the builds for it, they would realize that between arm strength and Berserker lines there is not a single trait that provides cleanse. All sustain available does not synergize with rifle, and comes at the cost of consistency and either 15 to 30% crit modifier or 20% total damage modifier. All options to gain stability directly compete with options to gain resistance, which we can't sacrifice, as blindness is spammable and ever-present. To deal with all the spammable blocks and projectile denial in the game, we have to run Signet of Might. To enter Rage reliably at the beginning of the fight, we have to run Signet of Fury. To triple Gunflame, we need Blood Reckoning and Outrage, and we have to spend all of those skills, putting ourselves without heal skill, without stun break, without stability or any other defensive boon, without cleanse, with all utility on cooldown, including stun break, and with weapon in hand that has very poor defense, just to do what Virtuoso can do with 3 buttons out of stealth opening up with CC at cost of no utility skills. But that ball of guano deserves its own dedicated video. Just like the blessing that dual wielding is, deserves one as well. And I'm currently on kind of a tight schedule, so I'll simply end this one by saying I do not see a possibility in the world that a build with no cleanse access other than sigils might be anything else but a troll build. However, to all who consider committing tomfoolery their moral obligation, consider checking out Bullshit Brigade's Discord server, where we can happily clown together. And consider supporting me through Patreon or channel memberships if you're willing to part ways with a little change. Alternatively, you can support me by watching my videos, which you clearly enjoy if you made it so far. My backlog is available at your discretion, and there is an option to turn on notifications so you don't miss further uploads, if you don't mind doing so, of course. Thank you in advance. And last but not least, a big sign of gratitude towards all the generous Patreon supporters, continuously considering my dubious quality content worth their money. You're all truly welcome. Crapface out.